What if I told you that 30 days is all it takes to go from frozen silence to fearless flow? Imagine standing face to face with a traveler who simply asks for a local recommendation, and despite knowing every word, your throat locks up like a rusted gate. That was the reality for Ethan, an 18-year-old who treated English as a mere checklist of exam rules rather than a living bridge to the world. For years, he was a top student on paper, yet a ghost in real conversations, trapped in an exhausting cycle of internal translation. The breaking point arrived at a local cafe when a simple question from a stranger left him sweating, his heart racing, and his mind a total blank. He offered only a broken, weak response that left him feeling small and deeply disappointed in himself. That night, Ethan realized he had been hiding behind excuses, waiting for a magic trick that would never come. He decided to stop blaming his school and started taking 100% ownership of his lack of fluency. He shifted his mindset from a casual student to someone truly obsessed with progress. In this video, we will break down the exact system Ethan used to rewire his brain and reclaim his voice. If you are ready to stop feeling embarrassed and start speaking with power, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now to elevate your English journey every single day. Transformation doesn't happen when life is easy. It happens when you decide you've had enough of your own limitations. Ethan realized that pointing fingers at his busy schedule or the lack of native speakers in his neighborhood was just a way to protect his comfort zone. He finally looked in the mirror and accepted a hard truth. His fluency was his responsibility alone. This realization shifted his entire world, turning English from a boring chore into a 30-day mission. He didn't just want to learn, he became obsessed. We often wait for the perfect moment to start, but Ethan chose a focused obsession instead. He swapped his mindless music playlists for English audiobooks during his morning runs and switched his computer's entire interface to English to force his brain to adapt. He stopped relying on fickle motivation and started relying on a simple, daily question. Did I train today? Even when he felt tired or discouraged, he pushed forward because he knew that true progress is built in those imperfect, difficult moments. You see, he wasn't just memorizing words. He was building the foundation of a future fluent speaker through quiet, relentless discipline. He wasn't just learning a language anymore. He was forging a version of himself that refused to remain silent. Have you ever felt the crushing frustration of knowing exactly what you want to say, but finding your mental library completely empty? Ethan hit this wall hard. He was trying to produce speech, the output, without ever feeding his brain the necessary input. We often make the mistake of jumping straight into speaking, but Ethan realized that if you don't encounter correct English patterns daily, your mind simply has nothing to give. He established a non-negotiable rule: immerse himself in simple reading every single day. He moved away from intimidating textbooks and instead chose easy-to-digest short stories, basic articles, and even comic scripts to build his confidence. Think of your brain as an empty reservoir. Reading is the steady rain that fills it up. By seeing phrases like, "I've been wondering if," or "it turns out that," over and over, Ethan's brain began to archive these structures automatically. He wasn't memorizing boring grammar formulas. He was absorbing the natural rhythm of the language. This foundation is what allows your mouth to eventually move without the agony of overthinking. Does your mind go totally blank the moment a stranger speaks to you? If you've ever felt that empty feeling, type ready in the comments if you're committed to filling your mental reservoir starting today. By choosing simplicity over complexity, Ethan ensured his foundation was unbreakable, proving that to speak like a pro, you must first read like a student. Silent understanding is a great start. But we must remember that your tongue doesn't learn just because your eyes do. Ethan, now 18 and fully committed to his mission, discovered that, while his mind was absorbing patterns through reading, his mouth remained clumsy and heavy. To bridge this gap, he dedicated 20 minutes every morning to the art of reading out loud. He didn't rush. He focused on the deliberate movement of his lips and jaw, treating it like a physical workout for his vocal muscles. We often forget that English isn't just a list of rules. It's a song with its own unique rhythm. By speaking the words on the page, Ethan began to feel how sentences naturally flow together. Instead of the stiff, robotic sentences from his school days like, "I want to go to the park," he started naturally saying things like, "I'm thinking of heading out for a stroll later." This wasn't about speed, it was about precision, tone, and confidence. He chose to be consistent rather than intense, knowing that a short, focused daily session is worth more than a 5-hour marathon once a week. You and I both know that true confidence is born when your voice finally matches the clarity of your thoughts. Step by step, his vocal clumsiness vanished, replaced by a steady, melodic control over every syllable he uttered. The real magic doesn't happen on day 1, but by the time Ethan reached his 10th day of consistent reading, the fog finally began to lift. We often think progress is a straight line, but for Ethan, it was a sudden realization while watching a documentary. He wasn't grasping for subtitles anymore. His mind was no longer a clunky translation machine. Instead, it was becoming a sponge soaking up the natural essence of the language. You see, when you feed your brain high-quality input, your output transforms from basic and robotic to rich and vivid. Instead of the typical, "I think this is good," Ethan found himself naturally saying, "This approach seems remarkably effective," or replacing "I'm tired" with "I'm feeling a bit drained today," without even pausing to think. This subtle shift is what separates those who know English from those who live. If you're wondering how to accelerate this process even further and bridge the gap between your thoughts and your voice, I highly recommend checking out another video on our channel titled "Stop Thinking, Start Speaking." It's a specialized guide on how to bypass the mental blocks that keep you stuck, offering a way to practice English that yields incredibly fast results. Go find that video right now to supercharge your training. By focusing on these natural patterns, Ethan realized that reading wasn't just about words. It was about upgrading his entire way of existing in English. He was finally moving past the shore of basic survival and diving deep into the ocean of true expression, proving that your voice only grows as loud as the ideas you've gathered. Breaking a lifelong habit requires more than just willpower. It requires a complete mental overhaul. At 18, Ethan realized that his vocabulary wasn't the real problem. It was the exhausting, invisible bridge of mental translation. He would hear a question, process it in his native tongue, hunt for English words, and check his grammar. By the time he was ready to speak, the conversation had moved on without him. Does that sound familiar to you? To fix this, he committed to a strict, no translation rule for his first week of brain training. He forced himself to think directly in English, even if the sentences were tiny and childish. Instead of overanalyzing, he simply narrated his life. The coffee is steaming. I am grabbing my bag. Or, the street is noisy. It was mentally draining, and his brain felt heavy with the effort of rewiring years of old habits. But we must understand that discomfort is the only path to speed. How much of your life have you missed because you were too busy translating instead of truly listening? Ethan chose the messiness of direct thought over the safety of slow translation, finally giving his brain permission to stop overanalyzing and start actually living in the language. Relying on a fleeting spark of inspiration is a dangerous trap that keeps most learners stuck in a frustrating cycle of starting and quitting. Ethan, at 18, realized that while his first week was about breaking mental barriers, week 2, the discipline phase, was specifically about fighting the enemy of inconsistency. We often wait for that perfect mood to study, but Ethan learned that motivation is an unreliable friend that often disappears when things get boring or difficult. To truly succeed, he decided to remove decisions entirely, giving his lazy brain no room to argue or make excuses for skipping a day. He stopped asking, "Do I feel like practicing?" and instead followed a non-negotiable, fixed 1-hour system. His schedule was simple but ironclad. 20 minutes of reading biographies to see how complex ideas connect, 20 minutes of active listening where he would pause a travel vlog to summarize the main points in his own words, and 15 minutes of speaking, often recording voice memos about his goals. He finished with a 5-minute review to lock in the day's progress. I want you to think about your own journey. Is your daily practice based on how you feel, or on who you want to become? Ethan understood that you don't wait for fluency to act disciplined. You act disciplined to earn your fluency. By treating his practice like an unbreakable appointment with his future self, he proved that consistency is the only real shortcut to mastery. Physical mastery is the bridge that finally connects your internal thoughts to the outside world. By week 3, Ethan realized that while his mind was becoming sharper, his mouth was still lagging behind like an untrained athlete. We often forget that speaking is a physical skill, not just a mental one. Your tongue and jaw need to be conditioned just like any other muscle. To bridge this gap, he launched into the train the mouth phase with relentless focus. He spent 10 minutes daily reading out loud, focusing on the crispness of his consonants, while describing something complex like the mechanics of a vintage clock. Then came shadowing. He mimicked a fast-paced travel vlogger, matching their excitement and speed syllable for syllable. I know how it feels when your jaw gets tight and your tongue feels heavy. But Ethan knew this discomfort was a sign of his speaking muscles getting stronger. He topped it off with 10 minutes of non-stop free speaking, perhaps narrating his vision for a future career without allowing himself to hit the pause button. You might stumble or feel awkward at first, but Ethan pushed through the clumsiness by choosing flow over perfection. By treating his vocal cords like a gym, he replaced his old, hesitant stumbles with a new sense of physical ease and control. By the end of this intense week, Ethan wasn't just thinking in English, his body was finally learning to dance to its rhythm. Entering the final stretch, Ethan realized that true mastery isn't about how much you know, but how much you're willing to live. By week 4, he stopped treating English like a textbook subject and started treating it like his primary reality. We often trap ourselves in a cycle of silence because we're terrified of errors, but Ethan embraced a new philosophy: flow over perfection. He established 3 mandatory speaking sessions every day, strictly forbidding himself from using any pre-written scripts. During his morning mirror routine, he spoke candidly about his personal anxieties and his aspirations for the future. In the afternoons, he moved through the world as a life narrator, describing the bustling city streets or the quiet rhythm of a local park, effectively turning his environment into a living classroom. Every night ended with a 20-minute free-flow session where he spoke continuously about complex ideas, much like hosting his own private podcast. He didn't stop to correct himself. He just kept the momentum going. This was the moment he stopped being a student learning English and became a person who simply speaks it. By choosing relentless movement over static accuracy, he finally allowed his voice to break free from its long-held cage. Reaching the final days of this intense journey, Ethan realized that fluency isn't a destination you arrive at, but a state of mind you finally inhabit. By the 26th day, the internal translator that had haunted him for years simply vanished, because it was no longer needed. While explaining his long-term career goals alone in his room, he noticed that the words weren't being fetched. They were simply flowing. He wasn't pausing to check grammar. His brain was automatically selecting the right patterns. He had planted through weeks of reading and speaking. We often crave compliments from others to feel successful. But Ethan found his true power in the evidence of his own consistency. He realized that fluency is not the absence of mistakes, but the presence of calmness and flow. He stopped identifying as a struggling student and began proudly saying, "I speak English." This shift in identity is exactly what we need to break our chains. Are you tired of feeling invisible during conversations? Does the fear of sounding stupid keep you locked in a prison of silence? It is time to stop wishing for a miracle and start building your own evidence. Subscribe to this channel right now to reclaim your voice and transform your English from a source of pain into a tool of freedom. The door to your new life is wide open, and the only person who can walk through it is you.